It's been 4 years since we started our homestead journey. We've made some mistakes and learned some hard lessons, but this way of living has transformed us in ways we never thought it would.
Don't get distracted. Come on.
Our journey began in July 2020. We moved from the desert in Arizona back to the Midwest with big plans to build a homestead in the country. So we packed up everything we had, including the cat and dogs, and we headed east. We knew we wanted to live a different life out here, far away from the city, grow our own organic natural food, raise chickens, collect our own water, have a few goats, and become more self-sufficient so that we could have a more sustainable way of living. We were lucky to find an amazing secluded property on nearly 4 acres, which was more than either of us had ever had before. There's something special about being among the trees, the wildlife, living more simply, and connecting with the earth. It has opened my eyes to a whole new world. One of the first things we did when we got here was explore the land. We wanted to feel it and let it know we were here to collectively build something beautiful with it. So we asked for its blessing and help. Then we started to clean some brush and forge stones to build our own fire pit. The first project we decided to tackle was the foundation for our permaculture garden. So I ordered a few giant piles of wood chips. I was so excited to see the first delivery arrive, and I couldn't wait to start hauling barrels of wood chips to the new garden site.
Doing a lot of this work most of this morning, all week. My body is feeling it, but it's a great kind of burn because I'm so excited and I've been waiting for this, and that's what keeps driving me to do this work. It's all going to be worth it. And this is the kind of effort we want and need to put in order to have the amazing amounts of food and beauty that we want to create here on our property. So now, let's wheel this over. And this has about at least 4-6 or so inches of wood chips. I've been laying down builder's paper first over the grass, and then layers of the wood chips. And what that will do is create nice rich soil underneath. It'll give fungi and healthy bacteria a chance to grow, which will actually create wonderful, beautiful soil for us that will be rich come time in the spring for when I start growing these vegetables and fruit trees, berry bushes, which is what will be grown here. This will be a thriving homestead for us. And down here below, we have a creek, and this is where the greenhouse is going, which is going to be arriving here in mid-November. So the greenhouse will be going here, which is where majority of the sun comes in. A creek lies behind that runs through the rest of our property below. And this is all of ours as well. We like to keep a good majority of our property untouched, wild. There's a lot of animals that live here, a lot of nature spirits that live here, fairies. So we want to make sure that we provide a good environment for them to thrive as well. Because when we work in harmony with a lot of the animals and nature spirits here, they will in turn produce great abundance to us as well. So all of this back here, eventually, if you can see over beyond the trees here, there's more clearing, and that is where hopefully we will intend on having maybe a couple goats and potentially doing more gardening in that area as well. But for now, this will all be untouched. So I am super excited because I just got my second drop of wood chips today, and I am anxious to get started. I'm already outside. As you can see, I've laid down my contractor's paper, which is what I lay down first. And then I set about 4 to 6 inches deep of wood chips right on top. And that is going to create a nice foundation for my soil come next season when it's time to grow.
Building the garden foundation took many, many days, but eventually we finished it. We also added a fence because we have a lot of deer. This was a much bigger project for just the two of us, so we got some help from one of our contractor friends. Seeing the posts in the ground started to make it all that much more real. So I was really getting excited. During that time, we also built our compost bins. We used old wooden pallets that we got from a local farmer nearby. We had never done this before, and it took us a couple days because we ran out of supplies and got the wrong ones. So we had to make multiple trips to the hardware store. It was our first build project ever, so we've learned a thing or two since then.
It's all right. This is a frustrating process.
So this has been quite an interesting process so far, even just getting this done, but it's coming along, and now we're going to move on to getting the door ready, which is going to be a little bit more involved, using a saw to kind of cut some pieces in half.
When we were putting these together, we had a problem of difference in pallet wood. Like this one was much more difficult to screw into. And so inevitably, we only could get some in part of the way, but it's good enough, it's stable, and it really does help to have an electric or cordless drill. It's almost required at this point.
Look at that.
Hey!
Door that works.
Looks fantastic. Second day of building the compost.
I don't need video right now, please. I can talk about my frustrations later. Right now, I just don't want that.
All right, okay.
But eventually we had to tear down those old wooden compost bins because the wood had rotted and they were falling apart. And we had to develop a new system. I'll show you what I did. I actually repurposed the other half as well to use as my compost area. Instead of building the compost bins that I was going to, I'm actually using this, repurposed it so that it's a nice little walk-in area to begin some composting in. And that is where I will do some like kind of pre-composting, breaking down some food scraps, the chickens, bedding, all of that kind of stuff, and just kind of leaving it there in a pile where I can easily access it, turn it, and then of course next to it, transfer it over into a separate open pile. And so that's, I think, what I'm going to do is take that approach instead of taking the time to build new compost bins. Before we knew it, the chicken coop had arrived. So we started to put that together. I had purchased a cedar one from Roost and Root. This project was a little easier since we had step-by-step instructions. But it wasn't long before we'd later realize that this coop choice was a bad one. As the chickens grew, they had less and less space, and so we had to add a run.
A rat's nest in my hair.
I know.
And I'm just not feeling it now.
You just got done building the chicken run. Just 2 words. How do you feel?
Oh my God, relieved. So relieved. This took days to do when it shouldn't have, but so many issues that we ran into, but it's done. Woo! Chickens have like an amazing home now, lots of space, and everything is pretty much predator proof.
But even then, it was hard to clean without crouching down and bumping my head every time. And my 6-foot-tall husband could barely get in it, so the cleanup task was all on me. Then, the first snowfall of the season had arrived. It was so beautiful, especially after spending several years in the desert. Our new greenhouse was arriving in a couple weeks, so we had to start preparing the foundation for that using 57 limestone. We had our greenhouse custom built by a local Amish maker, and I couldn't begin to tell you how giddy I was when they pulled down our drive. It was quite the process getting it around our new fence, and we realized it probably would have been easier to put up the fence after getting our new greenhouse. But they were back ordered at the time and couldn't deliver it until late in the season. We wanted to get the fence posts in the ground before it got too cold and the ground would freeze. I had spent years envisioning what our land would look like, what kind of food and plants I would grow, and a lively farm full of chickens and goats. So seeing our dream begin to become a reality was something very special. And that energy was beginning to manifest and take form. I spent the next several months gathering garden supplies and seeds and getting the greenhouse ready. It also gave us the opportunity to see how this land behaved under snow and gave us some time to readjust to it too. There were many dark and gray days, so having the snow makes it all that much more tolerable.
What are you doing?
I don't know what it is, but it just makes everything brighter, more beautiful and serene. It tugs at the inner child within me, that small little girl inside who wants to run and play in the snow, build snow forts and snowmen, and make snow angels. I'd rather have many days like this than the dark gray skies. I began to design my garden for my first grow season, thinking about where I'd build my garden beds, where I'd plant my fruit trees and shrubs. I also spent time doing a lot more research, took a beekeeping course, studied permaculture design, and how to garden with the moon and planetary phases. There's so much we can learn from nature if we simply stop to observe it. When we come back to nature and flow with it instead of against it, it will return so much abundance to us as well. It wants to be in harmony with us and reminds us that we are not separate from it, but a part of it. I couldn't wait for spring to arrive, but the next best thing did arrive. Baby chicks.
It's okay.
They brought a new kind of energy to our home. Being only a day old, they were so tiny and full of curiosity. And many of our original hens we still have to this day.
Yeah, I guess
That winter was a rough one. We got hit with a huge snowstorm, and many were without power and shelter. We have a well here and a cistern, but the well isn't big enough to sustain our entire household. So we have to have our cistern filled about once a month. Since we've been here, we've been trying to find new ways to capture water so that we're less and less dependent on the water delivery. One of those ways is through rainwater catchment. Being in the Midwest, we get a lot of rain, especially in the spring and early part of summer. So we added 2 large tanks on each side of the house, as well as one by the greenhouse. This is what we use to water our entire garden, the chickens and the goats, which significantly reduces our home water usage. When the snow melted, we ended up with so much water that flooded part of our land. Little did we know that this was only the beginning of our flood problems.
I wanted to come out here and check the greenhouse. But luckily the greenhouse is like up on a good foundation that's pretty high up, so hopefully that will keep it pretty dry, but this is kind of deep.
Spring arrived, bringing lots of rain and more flooding. Luckily, our house and garden is on a hill, but the greenhouse and pastures get hit every time. I knew this was something we were going to have to address, especially if we want to help protect this land. Once all the snow melted, I ordered a couple truckloads of organic compost to start building my garden beds. I had been dreaming how I wanted my garden to look and feel, but once I got out there, I started to change my plans a little bit. My intuition was telling me to do it a little differently. This was a big project and took me days to haul compost and dig back the mulch to create the beds.
I'm actually digging out my garden beds, and I initially had a plan in place for this, and I'm kind of loosely following it, but after being out here in this space, I'm kind of just like saying to hell with that and just kind of intuitively feeling my way with where I create the beds, where I would like them to go, and just kind of feeling that more as opposed to seeing it on paper in a diagram. So it feels actually really good to be able to do it that way, and feels a little bit more natural. And as you can see, there's going to be a lot of work to do on this because there's going to be a lot of beds, and this half is going to look very different from that half. Oh shit. Oh no. Okay, that's all right. That's okay.
I continued to work on it for many more days and then began to expand my garden around the house. But in the meantime, I had been starting seeds in the greenhouse too. I had hoped to get a head start on the grow season by starting most of my seeds early indoors. Every time I get my hands in some dirt and spend time preparing and nurturing plants, it brings me to a grounded and peaceful place within myself. I've always found gardening to be a form of meditation. I'm sure that's one of the reasons why I keep coming back to it. It feels like home. When I was going through heavy times in my life, connecting with nature gave me so much healing and helped me move through the darkest of days. It is in our nature to live close to the land. The further we've gotten away from that, we can see and feel the effect that it has had on our bodies, our minds, and our soul. And I am already seeing some things that I want to change in the garden. Look at this, guys. So the first year I was here, I planted comfrey, and it has taken over this section of my garden. It has just spread all over. And so I need to, once the season's totally done, I'm going to dig some of this up. The root is medicinal. The leaves are medicinal. It's also really good for the garden to make a compost tea. Not a compost tea, but rather a comfrey tea, and use that on the beds for the soil. So I think I will probably end up doing something like that. And the chickens love to eat comfrey as well, so I will probably give some to the chickens too. But this is something I'm definitely going to have to address because it is taken over, and I know that come next year, it's probably going to be even worse if I let it go like this. So, I can see obviously where a lot of the seeds have just carried over, and that's why it's spreading. So I really need to be better to it, cutting some of this back throughout the season, especially toward the end of the season when those seeds start to develop. Because you can even see here, look at this. So this is another one right here, just popping up. And there's one right back here too that I gotta pull and take out. But that's what happens in the garden. Spring settled in on the homestead, so I was finally able to start sowing some seeds and transplant some of my new seedlings.
Take on my heart, I love you. Don't let us part, I love you. Dear little girl, sweet little girl, sweeter than the rose of Erin, are your winning smiles endearing. Take on my heart, your glances with Irish art and trances, come be my own, come make your home in my heart.
Got our berry bushes, and I'm really excited to plant these. So they just arrived, and we have 4 blueberries right here. We have a raspberry right here, and then we have one raspberry in this group, as well as the rest are blackberries. And they are different kinds. So I'm really excited to start planting these in the gardens and see how they do this year. So this is a high bush blueberry, and ultimately it'll grow to be about 5 to 6 feet tall. And I'm putting a mixture of peat moss and some pine in there because they love that. That combination. And so I'm just kind of going through, picking out some of the larger chunks though that are in here, keeping those kind of away from the delicate shrub in this stage.
We then discovered that our home had been the birthing ground for cicadas. In a matter of days, our homestead was covered with them. We had never seen anything like it before. Cicadas are among the longest living insects on this planet, and this particular breed only emerges from the ground every 17 years, which just happened to be our first year of the garden.
The base of the tree is just covered in cicada shells, and they're crawling up the tree here, where they're just kind of hanging out until they dry out and can fly away and start mating. You can hear in the background, you can hear some cicada in the background. It has yet to go full-fledged cicada noise just yet.
Over the years, the garden has continued to grow and take new shape. New things were added each year, and I continue to learn what grows well in my area and what doesn't. That's one of the most beautiful parts about gardening, knowing that it's never done, nor expecting it to be, or wanting it to be. It's a cyclical process, always changing, much like the other life force on this planet, including ourselves. We, too, are always changing.
I unfortunately missed the mark for planting fruit trees, for getting those, because they were sold out when I tried to get them last season. And so this year I plan on planting those and hope that I can order those here quickly. But I plan on putting in some pear trees. We have some apple trees on the property already. They're not doing very well. They were already here when we got here, and they were already not doing very well. So I'm not sure how to revive apple trees. So if you have any advice for me, that would be fantastic. But they are starting to show some signs of some potential disease issues. So I'm debating putting in maybe even a couple more apple trees in the actual garden and nurturing those from the very beginning.
I have since added more fruit trees and berry bushes, an asparagus patch, strawberries, a few raised beds, a spiral rock herb garden, and even hoop houses. I also realized after the first couple years of growing food in the garden that the plants seem to do better when I direct sow versus when I transplant. Energetically, it also felt right to me to make this change going forward. I think many times gardeners want to get the most out of a grow season by starting everything as early as possible. But for me, There's something special about placing that seed with intention directly into the earth. There's an unspoken energetic bond that forms. It's as though the two finally meet, and it's love at first sight. The earth takes in the seed like a warm hug and sends its energy, feeding and nurturing the plant to help it grow. And the plant has the freedom to deeply spread its roots as it reaches high toward the sun, taking in every bit of water and sun ray, the best of both worlds, above and below and above, the yin and the yang. It's a match made in heaven, so I've decided not to tamper that relationship by starting the seeds indoors in confined pots and instead be a steward of the natural process of life. It's wild to see how much the garden has changed since its humble beginnings. It continues to grow and change with every passing year, and there are mistakes I've made, hard lessons I've learned, and unexpected things I've encountered that I never would have expected. But I also have curiously tried new methods that completely surprised me too. After that first year, I added hoop houses so that I could grow year-round and keep my brassicas protected from pests.
I've just been planting a lot of different things that will do well when the cold weather starts to hit. And in this bed as well, a lot of the chard and beets. We have varieties of kale growing in this bed. And I'll be adding to this as well so that we can continue to grow a lot of the greens that we enjoy throughout the season. And we're just going to test this out, see how it does for us this winter.
But I quickly realized that I didn't want to grow year-round. I actually enjoyed the peaceful break that winter brings, and instead started to view that time for what it is, a time to rest and restore. Nature is intelligent, and again, when we can observe the patterns of nature, we can clearly see how we can live in tandem with it, shape our lives to mimic that of what it's trying to tell us with the change of seasons. Each seasonal passage serves a purpose, and winter is for rest. When everything seemingly dies, the earth is hibernating, working beneath the surface to regain its strength for the energy it needs come spring, when new creation emerges. So I use that time to regain my energy, gather supplies, and plan for the following year, planting the seeds in my mind for what's to come. A couple years ago, I also started to learn about electroculture. Everything is energy and has a frequency. And when you insert copper into the earth, it subtly shifts those frequencies and can bring more growth and abundance naturally to your garden, which is what it's done. So that's definitely something I will continue. Electroculture. I'm a firm believer in this. And I gotta say, my acupuncturist has been doing electroculture the last 2 years, and he said it has made a huge difference in his garden. Everything has just been growing so rapidly, and so he is a firm believer in it as well, and said that he won't be turning back. He actually uses other little next to certain plants that he really wants to see some growth from. He will use bamboo and actually wrap the copper wire around that and then stick the bamboo next to the plant in it. And he always notices a huge difference in those plants where it has the actual bamboo with the copper wire sticking right next to it. So I think I might do that because this right here is a huge one that I had set up. As you guys might remember from the video,
that I put out. But this is sort of like in the center of my garden. And so I think what I'm going to do is do little small ones like that throughout my garden as well, and see how that works for me next year. But I am excited about that, and definitely want to do that more.
I've also learned how to work with the space in my garden. What grows well where. This is something you don't know until you start. One end of my garden gets the most sun, and the other end slopes down toward the woods and is shadier and doesn't drain as well. So I grow all my sun-loving plants on the sunnier side. Again, I don't know what it is with my lack of success with some beans. I'm trying just different spots too. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just the spot, because the garden is on a slope. I do sometimes have struggles with things growing on that last half of the garden that I showed you, that backs up against the woods. It's a little bit more shaded there. It does get more like the afternoon sun, but not that morning sun. I mean, you could see from what I showed you guys, it's still a little dark on that side of the garden versus the other side. So this side is a little bit more shaded, which is why I usually plant a lot of my brassicas and stuff on this side. And I try to plant all of my sun-loving plants on this end. And the beans, though, are planted. I planted some right here. And again, it's doing okay. It's not vigorously growing as much as I would have expected to see it, but it is starting to really take off and climb up this little obelisk that I had put together. Again, some of the other plants were taken out by some nibbling animals. So I think I might even attempt to plant some more seeds there and see if anything else decides to grow before the fall comes along. My third year in, I had my soil tested and learned that it was in desperate need of more nitrogen and some other amendments. And as I've said before, one of the most important things about any garden is the health of the soil. So I learned how to enrich my soil not only with organic matter like compost, but with other things like kelp, azomite, blood meal, leaf mold, and homemade biochar.
I'm just waiting for this thing to burn, and it's taking, of course, a while. And I didn't want to leave it unattended in case I need to add more kindling, but it looks like it's burning pretty good right now, which is good. It's nice and hot in the kiln. And the cedar logs are finally starting to burn, which is a good thing. That's what I want. So I'm just going to continue to sit here and monitor this thing while also giving the goats some time to explore the land a little bit more, get out of their pen. They've been enjoying that quite a bit. And hopefully I will have some biochar very, very shortly.
I also explored other natural soil drench solutions using organic matter like humic acid, leaf mold, and potatoes. And even made my own natural pest controls using neem oil or my own sort of soap spray using potassium hydroxide, which was a little more difficult to make. The biggest thing I've learned when it comes to pests is that when you continue to work at building a balanced ecosystem in your garden, over time, you will attract the beneficial insects, and there will be less and less pest issues naturally. I've already begun to see this in my garden after only 4 years. I've also tried growing things like mushrooms, outdoors and indoors. Outdoors was a disaster. I spent so much time gathering the fresh logs of the specific type of tree I needed for the particular type of mushrooms I was growing, and then inoculated each log, which was a tedious process, and set them up in a shady spot, covered them, and waited. But nothing happened. It just became a home for mice. After more research, I found out that you have to water these logs. So in the summer, when it got dry and we had weeks of no rain, I watered the garden, but never thought to water the mushroom logs. So they dried out and no fruit produced. I then decided to take it indoors. And this time, it worked. So do you remember when I mentioned our homestead flooding? Well, that never quite went away. In fact, year after year, we had more and more problems. I even dug a swale to try and reduce the amount of water getting into the greenhouse, but it didn't work. It got so bad that we were losing part of our driveway. So we had to call an excavator to help us. We expanded the creek and created new channels that would direct the flow of water into the newly widened creek. And that has kept our pasture area dry. But the area near the greenhouse was still underwater. We thought we'd take some advantage of some of that excess water and had the idea to drill a new well. We saw some others do it easily, so we thought we'd follow their steps and do it ourselves. Only it didn't work. We ran into so many issues, like the drill cap getting stuck onto the pipe from pounding it deeper and deeper into the ground. And when we finally got that cap off, it stripped the pole threads. So we had to cut the top of the pole and try to create new threads. Only the ground around it is never dry enough to get a good footing around it to properly do that. As months went on and the abandoned pole sat, we saw more and more flooding happen in the greenhouse. So we knew we needed to move it to higher ground. We started to build the new foundation for the greenhouse to be moved closer to the house on dry land. It was the best decision we made. After a couple years on our homestead, we started to add more and more to it. And a big part of that were goats. I started off wanting only 2 goats, but went home with 4.
Don't get distracted. Come on.
We had planned to use them for clearing parts of our land, including the poison ivy that was all over our property. But they don't perform as we thought they would. We discovered that our goats are homebodies. They love staying around their pen or our house deck. We have to lure them with food to get them to go anywhere else. And when I do, they barely eat any of the things I actually want them to. Instead, they wait for their hay or grain. Despite not performing as we thought they would, they have quickly made a home in our hearts and have become a part of our family. But taking care of goats isn't easy. It's a big responsibility, and I've had to do things I never thought I'd be doing, like trimming hooves, applying medications, and cleaning loads and loads of goat manure. While I did my research before getting goats and knew what the job would entail, it still doesn't quite prepare you for all the unexpected. I had to learn about immune issues and how to keep them healthy naturally using herbs and minerals, and that they're sensitive creatures who need love, rubs, and scratches. They're also expert escape artists and can be quite destructive.
You guys, get out! Get out! Get out!
We've had to repair their fence numerous times and even build them a new shed just to store their hay in, which was the biggest build project we had ever done before and took us way longer to complete than we had anticipated. Since we've been here, we've experienced some loss,
They're off.
which is the hardest thing we face on the homestead. We love all our animals and take very good care of them, but other animals love them too, as food. So we do everything we can to keep them protected using solar-powered electric fences, but even then, we've lost some of our feathered friends. Our chicken flock started small, and since then, it's grown. We added a rooster, which was given to us by one of the guys who used to trim our trees. But we lost him that following year to a fox. Since then, we've lost several hens to the fox. We realized that the fox will keep coming back for more, so we had to make some changes to the way we care for our chickens. We started them off pasture raised. We'd let them out when the sun rose and put them away when the sun set. But the fox would come around later in the morning or even late afternoon. So that window of time they'd be out foraging free and happy became less and less. So we tried a mobile coop. But the girls hated it. We tried many other options to give them the best of both worlds, but in the end, had to create a large pen area that gave them an upgraded chicken coop and many other spaces to explore, including fresh drops of compost and wood chips to dig into. We also give them food from the garden, and they love it. I just filled them up. Like their pen is full of food scraps and stuff from the garden. They have some tomatoes out there to pick at. They have various lettuces to pick at, blueberries. I put some sweet potatoes, some cooked sweet potatoes out there for them too. But I don't know if I told you guys specifically this, but we do have a rooster. Oh my gosh, I can't even believe. So we just found this out. You guys might remember in April, we had ordered 4 new hens, new little babies. They were a day old when we got them. And yeah, as they've gotten bigger and bigger, my husband recently, he mentioned, he said, I think we might have a rooster. We kept watching because he said, I heard it crow in the morning. And I thought still, I mean, it could still be a hen that's just a little more chatty. And a few days later, he called me outside, and sure enough, I heard the crow. And it was a definite crow, a rooster crow. And I looked up the breed, which is a lavender Orpington. I could tell weeks ago, actually, that particular one was just taller and was standing just a little bit more proudly, more upright than the others, and had long legs, like very tall legs. And I thought, oh, interesting. Maybe that's just part of the breed. And I just kind of disregarded it at the time. And so sure enough, he has all the signs of a rooster. And so he has been now crowing practically every morning. So now a new protector is making his place within the flock. So perhaps they'll have their time to freely explore once again. After taking a beekeeping course my first year being here, I decided to give it a try. I got everything I needed to do natural beekeeping, but that meant catching a local swarm of bees. I set up my trap box that year in a tree near our pasture, but caught nothing. It turned out for the best that year because I ended up getting a horrible case of poison ivy all over my body that took months to recover from. So the thought of putting on a full bodysuit to care for new bees was the last thing I wanted to do. So I took it as a sign that it wasn't the right time. I tried again this past spring to catch a local swarm, setting up 2 boxes, but again, caught nothing. Local bees are adapted to our more northern climate and have better chances surviving our harsh winters. When you buy packaged bees, they're oftentimes from southern states like Georgia and Texas, so they have a harder time adapting to the cold winters, and sometimes they don't survive. I decided that I'll continue to try, but passively. If it happens, it was meant to be, and if not, that's okay. So I want to show you guys this. We've been getting, of course, a ton of rain. I mean, a lot of rain. It's just been days and days of storms and this weather, super wet. But look at this. This is our creek here overflowing. This is where the greenhouse used to be. And as you can see, I just put a couple hives, one here, and I put one up higher right behind the goat shed because I wanted to see if I can catch any local swarms this year. And I decided to do it a little more passively as opposed to in the past where I tried hanging a trap box in a tree. But this time I'm just gonna do it this way and see if any decide to move in because I'm not putting too much pressure on myself to do the natural beekeeping. If it happens, it's meant to happen. If not, then that's okay. I have so many other things to focus on anyway. And so as much as I would love to get bees, I'm approaching it more in this way, which feels better to me. And so I'm a little concerned though, as you can see with this, of course, practically floating. I mean, it's on 3 levels of cinder blocks right now, and you can see that whole bottom level of cinder blocks is completely underwater. And this is just a couple days of heavy rain. We got a lot of rain last night, some crazy storms. My dog was actually, my older dog was hiding in our bathroom, would not come out. It was that loud, that bad. But I want to show you this too in the garden. I've been really busy, guys, so I'm going to share more updates. But look at this. Spiral rock garden. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. It took so much work, but you guys can see here, I've been busy. We had another addition last year to our homestead that we did not expect. A new Aussie. Ollie was offered to us for free by an Amish family that needed to rehome him. So we took him in. He was only 3 months old when we brought him home, and he's quickly made his place here. He's a farm dog through and through. Knew exactly what to do with the goats and chickens, and does his job around here very well. He stays by my side and keeps me company in the garden, always curious about everything I'm planting or harvesting. No. I know, it's good. It's good. Winters on the homestead can be rough. The animals always have a tough time adjusting, and so do we. And the weeks leading up to it can be a lot of work. After the garden season ends, the beds need cleaned up, fresh compost, and coverage for winter. It's a time when I harvest everything I grew that year and find creative ways to store it. Preserving the food we grow is a great way to get through winter, but it's something I'm still learning how to do more of. Working with the plants is a deep love of mine, especially the medicinal plants. I just want to briefly interrupt this video to share how I keep my body and mind well, and my spirit lifted. I hand blend my own herbal teas, and I've been working with the plants, especially the medicinal ones, for quite some time now. I'm a firm believer that anything our bodies need can be found on this earth or within us. The plants have healing powers. And now you can find my teas on my website, thenakedgardener.us. One of my herbal blends, Beam Me Up, is great for boosting men's libido, balancing hormones, and treating erectile dysfunction. It includes some powerful herbs that are known to be nature's Viagra. There's another called Free Radical that I especially crafted to reduce free radicals in the body. Because we live in a world that is full of toxins, exposed to radiation from our devices, poor diets, smoking, and chronic stress, our bodies produce too many free radicals and can't handle the overload, which can damage our cells and DNA. This tea is great for counteracting that. My Cloud9 tea helps those with ADHD or depression, and I have other medicinal tea blends that reduce anxiety and relieves digestive issues. And since we are cyclical by nature, when the seasons change, I love making a special blend that supports us in that new season. Right now, it's my summer sun tea, one of my favorites. It keeps my body cool in the heat, keeps me hydrated, and is loaded with vitamins and antioxidants. So good for the body when the summer heat rises. I love brewing this one in the sun. I just add the plants and water to my tea infuser and keep it in a sunny place. The heat of the sun naturally heats and purifies the water, extracting all of the potent powers from the plants and gives it more sun-powered energy. So good for you. You can find all of my teas on my website, thenakedgardener.us. Thanks for your support. Plants have been used as medicine for years, especially in old world times. Over the years, that knowledge has been lost. Most people go to the grocery stores to buy their food, order it online, dine at restaurants, eat fast food, and seek convenience, not even knowing or questioning where that food came from or how it was prepared.
It's the first whole egg.
We've lost our connection to the source of our food, our sustenance for life, and therefore our connection to nature, the source of all life. The further we move away from our knowledge and understanding of our true nature, the further we move away from humanity, love, compassion, and truth. We see this reflected in the world we live in today, as technology, greed, ego, power, and control has formed a dark cloud that is looming over us every day. To break free is to go inward, listen to the soul, and return to the true nature of all life. Because much like all living things in this world, there is a cycle, one of death and rebirth. As one season ends, another begins. And with each passing day, we are born again. As the sun rises and again sets, making way for the moon to reveal its magic and carry us into a new beginning. A cycle of inhale and exhale, just like the breath we take moment to moment and rely on to live. Or the way the ocean hugs the shore with each wave in the same rhythmic pattern. It's almost like this material world is an illusion, a magic trick, constantly taking new form, shifting its shape, fading in and out of our existence. But the soul lives forever. It's eternal, and who we truly are at the core. A free and sovereign being.